When Jesus was on the boat, what happened? He was on the boat with his disciples and there was a storm that came. And in fact, there were actually two storms that Jesus was in. One is recorded for us in Mark chapter 4, and then the other one is recorded for us in Matthew chapter 8. So which one do you think happened first? Well, if you go to Mark chapter 4, this is the account that most people are familiar with. It says here in verse 35, "And it came to pass in the same hour that there arose a great storm in the sea, and the boat was being beaten by the waves, but he himself was asleep." So this would indicate that the storm came after Jesus was on the boat. However, if we go to Matthew chapter 8, it says here in verse 23, "And when Jesus was entered into the ship, his disciples came to him, and behold, there was a tempest in the sea, and the ship was in the midst of the sea, being tossed with the waves. But he that called them was in the hinder parts of the ship asleep. And his disciples came to him, and woke him up, saying, Lord, save us, we are perishing." So this would indicate that the storm was there before Jesus got on the boat. So which one is correct? Well, I've heard people try to harmonize this. Some people say, well, this one happened before, but it was just a little storm. And then later on there was a greater storm that happened, and so therefore the accounts are not contradictory. I don't know why you would need to harmonize this. I mean, if this was a great storm that was recorded in Mark chapter 4, why wouldn't it be recorded in Matthew? Why would they just say it was a little storm and then later it became a great storm? No, this is obviously the same event. And the reason that these two accounts are not contradictory is because Mark chapter 4 comes before Matthew chapter 8 in the timeline of Jesus' life. You have to remember, Mark is the first gospel. So when Mark tells an event, that means it happened earlier in Jesus' life. Matthew comes later. So therefore, when Matthew tells an event, that means it happened later in Jesus' life. So this is the order that they happened. First Matthew 8, then Mark 4. Now, many people will come along and say, well, the order of the Gospels is not important. That's not correct. The order that they were written in is very important because it gives us an understanding of the timeline of Jesus' life. So yes, the order of the Gospels is important. So this means that Matthew 8 comes after Mark 4. So what was happening in Jesus' life when he was on the boat? Well, simply this, that Jesus had called his disciples to follow him. And when they got into the boat and they started to cross over to the other side of the sea, a storm arose. What does this teach us? Well, it teaches us several things. Number one, it teaches us that the disciples didn't learn anything. Because you would think that after Jesus calmed the storm, the second time a storm came, that they would wake him up right away. But no, they didn't. They waited until the ship was in the midst of the sea and they were perishing before they woke him up. So they didn't learn anything. It also teaches us that Jesus is still in the boat with us through the storms of life, and he gives us peace in the storm even though he may sleep, as it were, or seem to be unaware of what's going on. He is still in control. And we can trust him, even when we're going through the storms of life, even when we're perishing, even when we feel like we're going to sink. Jesus is there, and he can calm the storm. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little mini lesson on when Jesus was on the boat. If you did, make sure to subscribe so you get notified every time we upload a new video. Until next time, God bless you.